Well, interesting news coming through from Los Angeles. Dr. Conrad Murray, only a few hours ago, Michael Jackson's doctor, sentenced to 4 years for involuntary manslaughter. 4 years, of course, that was the maximum that was allowed for that particular charge, that particular crime that was levelled at him, for which he was found guilty. The judge, his name's Michael Pastor, and he appeared to throw the book at him. It seemed a very intemperate outburst by this judge.
It was quite theatrical.
It was very theatrical, and he was extemporising. I mean, given how significant this judgment was, in Australia, a judge would have penned his verdict, his judgment, and would have delivered it per his script with very few asides. It looked to me like most of what this bloke was saying was extemporised.
Not just that, Steve. There's also, this is a very solemn moment where you're about to deprive someone of their liberty, and it's one of the most profound things you can do in a democracy.
And rather than looking disturbed or contemplatory about it, he almost seemed to be revelling in it. Here's a little of what the judge had to say.
Dr. Murray abandoned his patient. Dr. Murray's course of conduct extended over a period of time. Dr. Murray repeatedly lied, engaged in deceitful misconduct, and endeavored to cover up his transgressions. He violated the trust of the medical community, of his colleagues, and of his patient. And he has absolutely no sense of remorse, absolutely no sense of fault, and is and remains dangerous.
That's the demeanour one would expect of a prosecution attorney in Australia. Whether that's usual on the bench over in the US and the nature of that sentence delivered, let's find out from Michael Cavalluzzi. He's a top West Hollywood attorney, criminal attorney. He's on the line now. Michael, thanks for your time.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Michael, I want to talk, before we get to the sentence itself, the 4 years, just want to talk about the demeanour of the judge. I was just remarking to Alan, that seems to me very excitable, rather than sombre. He was almost excited, performing for the cameras.
Well, in the United States, or at least in Los Angeles, it actually really is common for a judge to speak extemporaneously and to go off script and start just talking about, in a very candid way, how they came to the decision that they did and how they came to that sentence. Also, it's a very punitive system in California, so it is almost uncommon for judges to be extremely somber when they're actually laying out their verdicts, and in fact, they tend to become somewhat punitive in their temperament. And then when you add to that the fact that this was all being played out in the public eye and in a very highly scrutinized and media-hungry way, it just adds to the whole performance level of the judge. I know Judge Pastor quite well, and he tends to be somewhat animated even on a day when there are no cameras. So when you add in the cameras, I'm sure that he was performing at high level today.
How much do you say he was grandstanding? How much, both of the sentence itself, the substantive nature of the sentence, and where it's to be served, and the delivery of the judgment at the time of the sentence, do you say was grandstanding because of the fact this is the highest profile case one could imagine?
Yeah, let's start with the sentence itself. And of course, as you just said, the sentence was 4 years, which is the maximum sentence. And that's somewhat uncommon in a case where a person has no criminal record and where everything about Dr. Murray's history tends to show that he was a very respectful, competent, professional, and caring doctor, and that this was an anomaly. Whatever caused him to behave in the manner that he did, it seems to be very unique to the situation involving Michael Jackson. So I do think the sentence itself was, number one, so harsh due to the public nature of the entire case, but also due to the power of the family itself. When a prominent and powerful family such as the Jacksons is fighting very vocally for a maximum sentence, a judge is going to very much more seriously consider that sentence over something that I would see as being a bit more fair and reserved given the nature of the offense. Secondly, the manner of how he laid out the sentence itself. I do believe to a large extent he was playing for the cameras and making sure that he gave as dramatic a delivery as he possibly could, because as I say, he knows that the world will be watching him. And, it is always to the advantage that a judge be perceived as being very hard on crime. And then lastly, in terms of the manner of how it's being served, the manner of how Dr. Murray is going to serve his sentence has mostly to do with new legislation in California about how prison sentences are to be served for nonviolent felons. So the judge has very little control in terms of the manner of the sentence itself.
Michael, the judge was fairly emphatic that the doctor was a continuing threat to the community. Does that sound fair enough?
I don't believe that that's fair at all. What a judge is saying is laying out his verdict. The way that it works in the state of California is when you sentence someone to prison, it's a low term, a mid-term, or a high term. The 4 years is the high term. In order to sentence a defendant to the high term, a judge has to lay out the aggravating factors that get him to that high term. A judge cannot just decide on his own without laying out his reasoning. He cannot just say, I'm sentencing you to the high term. So I think that continuing danger to the community is one of those buzzwords that a judge needs to use to defend his sentence in the event that that sentence is appealed at a later date. Which it might be in this case. And so, because I don't think that anybody, if we're really thinking calmly and responsibly here, I don't think that anybody feels that Dr. Murray today and moving forward is actually a threat to the community.
One would imagine that the chances of him repeating that sort of dosage on any other patient ever again in the future is almost inconceivable. I want to ask you, Michael, about the fact then of how he's going to serve. He's got 4 years on paper. In real terms, in LA, how much time is he going to spend in an actual jail? Where's he going to spend most of that sentence? And just spitballing it, how much time would you see him actually spending time behind bars?
Okay, well, let's start with the actual law itself. When someone is sentenced to 4 years state prison in the state of California, they're automatically entitled to half-time, meaning that if his prison sentence were to be served in a manner that is consistent with the law as it was prior to this new legislation, he would serve only 2 years. With this new legislation, which will keep him out of prison completely and will mean that he will spend his time in county jail, he will still not do more than half the time, which is the 2 years, but because of all of the overcrowding that is happening in the state of California and in the county of Los Angeles, it is possible, although maybe not likely in a high-profile case like this, it is possible that he could get house arrest, which is electronic monitoring, which is where he's confined to his home, and he could serve his entire sentence that way, or most of it. What will keep him from doing that probably here is that this is a high-profile case, and there could be a lot of outrage and public outcry if, in fact, they were to release him earlier than that 2 years. So he might be the exception to how prisoners are normally serving out their sentences, whereas where nonviolent criminals they're trying very hard to release them.
All right, Michael. Look, Michael, really appreciate your time. Thanks for speaking with us and clarifying many of those things. Michael Cavalluzzi, top West Hollywood attorney from Cavalluzzi and Cavalluzzi, criminal attorney in Los Angeles. Really appreciate that, Alan. Very interesting. Let's discuss that. If you've got any thoughts about it, 131-873. Back with more of Alan Howe after this.
Being my friend, I said you called Dr. Robert.